Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a Kelly Files special on the presidential power grab. I'm Megyn Kelly. Tonight, we investigate the growing concern over what critics are calling a lawless presidency, with an executive branch ignoring constitutional restrictions and creating, editing, or ignoring laws as the president sees fit. To be fair, Mr. Obama has not tried to hide what he's doing.
We can't wait for an increasingly dysfunctional Congress to do its job. I've told my administration to keep looking every single day for actions we can take without Congress. With Congress, or on my own, I've got a pen and I've got a phone. And I can use that pen to sign executive orders and take executive actions and administrative actions that move the ball forward. Now, I'm going to be working with Congress where I can to accomplish this. But I'm also going to act on my own if Congress is deadlocked. I've got a pen to take executive actions where Congress won't, and I've got a telephone to rally folks around the country on this mission. Where Congress isn't acting, I'll act on my own. I've got a pen and I've got a phone, and that's all I need. So wherever and whenever I can take steps without legislation to expand opportunity for more American families, that's what I'm going to do.
Wow, so you get the point. President Obama made good on that pledge when he recently rewrote the Obamacare law in order to delay a key mandate affecting millions of workers. He says it was done to, quote, smooth the transition of the law's implementation. Critics argue he did it to help Democrats avoid paying a bigger political price in the 2014 midterms. But motive really doesn't matter. A deadline was clearly written into the law. It was written. It shall happen. The employer mandate shall kick in. And the president ordered the country to ignore it on his own, without congressional approval or any legislative review. Now, this is not the first time. In fact, our research team says this is the 28th major change to Obamacare that was simply ordered by the White House. And it is not just health care. The president recently declared a hike in the minimum wage for some federal workers. He unilaterally rewrote immigration law, a very contentious issue, repeatedly in recent years. And the White House is facing a Supreme Court challenge for a questionable tactic to appoint left-leaning members to the National Labor Relations Board without the required congressional review. He claimed that it was a recess appointment and Congress wasn't necessarily in recess. Now, the concern is growing in Congress, and it's growing increasingly loud. Listen to this.
We have an increasingly lawless presidency. Presidents don't write laws. Congress does.
What this president has done is unprecedented. What this president has done is to repeatedly change laws, even laws that he himself has pushed through Congress for his own political benefit.
The president seems to have an extra frustration with it, and he reacts to it through unilateral actions that I think are counterproductive and, in my opinion, in some instances, borderline unconstitutional.
For the president to simply declare, I'm going to change this law that Congress has passed, is unconstitutional. He's outside the bounds of his Article 2 limitation.
The president says he has a pen and a cell phone, but the American people have a Constitution, and the Constitution doesn't give him the authority to unilaterally change the law. He's got to come to the Congress to do that.
This president and this administration enforce the laws they choose to enforce and ignores the laws they want to ignore for political expedience. This is the very definition of lawlessness and something that the American people do not tolerate and will not tolerate, nor should they be required to tolerate.
When people say it's the law of the land, well, maybe the president ought to start realizing that it's the law of the land and enforce it. It's one of the reasons why there's so little trust of this White House.
And the worry about this power grab is not just a Republican talking point. Two recent Fox News polls on this issue had some pretty clear results. Nearly three-quarters polled say this is not how government is supposed to work. And in fact, there was a huge number of Democrats who agreed with that. 60% say they disapprove of President Obama using executive orders to go around Congress. 37% are okay with that. So tonight we will review the threat here to our constitutional form of government. We will see how all of this compares to a much criticized Bush White House. And we will look at how even the left is now starting to raise questions about an absentee media in covering all of this. But we begin with two men who have spent much of their careers writing about the recent arc of political history. Chris Stirewalt is our Fox News digital politics editor and host of Power Play on FoxNews.com Live. And Tucker Carlson is editor-in-chief of The Daily Caller and co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Gentlemen, good to see you both. Here's where I want to kick this off. I take you back to 2008. Remember this man?
But this is part of the whole theory of George Bush, that he can make laws as he's going along. I disagree with that. I taught the Constitution for 10 years. I believe in the Constitution, and I will obey the Constitution of the United States.
Chris, what happened to that, Barack Obama?
Well, he got elected. What he was talking about there was signing statements, which were things that the Bush administration, President Bush, would say, well, I'm signing the law, but I think it says this, or I think it will do this, or won't do that. And Democrats were very much up in arms about that. Imagine, though, if George W. Bush or any Republican president had decided he wouldn't enforce the tax code as it was written about one thing or another, it would have been an even greater uproar. I think what happened pretty clearly was that this president became unwilling, frustrated, and unwilling to deal with Republicans once they took over in the House, and excused himself from the political battlefield, giving himself the out of saying, I'll just rule by executive order, and I won't have to deal with those knuckleheads.
The thing is, Tucker, intransigence, gridlock, the system was set up to work that way.
And it was set up to work the way precisely because the framers were so concerned about the tendency of the executive to become an autocrat. And also about the tendency of the voters to want an autocrat. People want a strong man, and the framers, who had a very deep understanding of human nature, recognize this. That's why they set up the legislative branch as a co-equal branch. And I have to say, it's not just Obama. I think every president leans in this direction. Roosevelt tried to basically nullify the judicial branch by packing the Supreme Court.
Roosevelt put the Japanese in internment camps during World War II.
He certainly did.
I want to talk executive power
But
grab.
what's so striking here is how passive the Congress has been. I know you had that montage of outraged lawmakers, but the truth is, just for example, on the NSA spying business, the Congress does not have access. Only 12 members on the Intel Committee have access to that information. They are prohibited by law from sharing it with their elected colleagues. That is, talk about an emasculation of the legislative branch. I mean, I don't know why they stand for that, but they have for over 10 years. It's really baffling.
The question for you, Chris, is whether this is because the system was designed to work this way. You know, it's a pain when you can't get your legislation agenda through Congress, but oh well, they're still there. They're in the Constitution, just like you are as the president. Is this a massive cop-out by him, rather than trying to find a way to work with these people?
Well, he does not strike me as a president who particularly enjoys the job. And he has complained about it, and he doesn't like it. And the cop-out relates to saying that these Republicans are particularly bad, particularly perfidious. They're extra mean and really dispatriotic is what he says. Right. They hate me. They hate really what this country is about or has become, and therefore they're beneath my contempt even as president, so I'm just going to not deal with them. The problem that stems from that, however, is very serious, and it is one in which these executive powers are not adequate to govern a nation. They won't fit the bill, and either the presidency is going to have to grow to tyrannical proportions, or eventually he's going to have to work with Congress.
Well, not only that, though, Tucker, but as he grabs more power for himself, does that have the effect with these Republicans on Capitol Hill, who've got their own agenda, love it or hate it, of not making them want to give him anything because he's just, whatever the law is, he's going to say it is what he thinks it is.
Well, it makes any kind of cooperation impossible, and they have their own motives for not cooperating, but this ensures that will never happen. I would say, though, that he's particularly aggressive in his use of executive power because there is a moral component to it. I think what Chris said is absolutely right. He considers his opponents not simply opponents, but bigots who are unreasonable, who are opposed to him for pre-rational reasons, and there's always been this kind of metaphysical quality to the Obama administration as there was the campaign. We're the ones we've been waiting for. I mean, there's a spiritual dimension that makes him a zealot.
Let me ask you that. Final question. Is that why, in your view, we're going to get to this later as well, the left has been so silent about this when they were so vocal when President Bush did power grabs?
I think that is it. And where, by the way, where are all the honest civil libertarian liberals I grew up with? I don't know if they've moved to New Zealand or something, but they should be speaking out now. We need them.
Great to see you both.
You bet.
Thanks, Megan.
Well, it isn't just Republican lawmakers sounding the alarm on this issue. Some legal experts from across the political spectrum have begun questioning these presidential power grabs. In December, the House Judiciary Committee called a series of witnesses to testify on this issue, and here's a little of that.
I agree entirely that the president cannot simply refuse to apply or enforce a law for policy reasons.
The center of gravity is shifting, and that makes it unstable. And within that system, you have the rise of an Uber presidency. There could be no greater danger for individual liberty.
If the people come to believe that the government is no longer constrained by the laws, then they will conclude that neither are they.
A check on executive lawlessness is impeachment. And if you find that the president is willfully and repeatedly violating the Constitution, if on your hypothetical he were to declare war, I would think that would be a clear case for impeachment.
He's not simply posing a danger to the constitutional system. He's becoming the very danger the Constitution was designed to avoid.
Joining me now, two of the men you just saw, Professor Jonathan Turley and Professor Nicholas Rosenkranz, who testified before Congress. Gentlemen, good to see you both. And so, Professor Rosenkranz, you're with the Cato Institute and Georgetown, and Professor Turley, you're, fair to say, a progressive-minded lawyer and at George Washington Law School. So let me ask you, Professor Turley, because you made a lot of news on our show this week when you suggested the president has gone beyond what President Bush, or at least what other presidents have done. Where do you see this going? Because I think a lot of our viewers are getting concerned that there's not going to be any check on this president's power, that he's just going to keep doing this over and over, and that no one's really going to stand up. So have we now turned a corner that we can't go back around?
Well, Megan, there's very good reason for people to be concerned. And I think that regardless of your view of the president's policies, you need to take note of a fundamental change happening in our government. I happen to agree with many of his policies, but we have a system that really it's more important sometimes how you do something than what you do. And in this system, the framers devised to have three branches that exist in a type of locked orbit. They're held there by inverse and equal powers. When you have concentration in one branch, it creates a dangerous instability. And it's not just a danger to the authority of these branches. That separation of powers was primarily designed as a protection of civil liberties. Because when you have that concentration, it can bring authoritarianism. It can bring tyranny. That's what the framers were concerned about.
Before I go to Professor Rosenkranz on this, let me ask you, Professor Turley, what do you think happened to that Barack Obama that we played in the soundbite from 2008? Because he was a constitutional law professor, as he pointed out in that soundbite. He came into office, you know, if you take him at his word, determined not to be this way.
You know, it's a disappointment. I voted for Barack Obama, and I'm from Chicago originally. And I'm astonished at how this has turned out. But frankly, President Obama has always put programs ahead of principles, in my view. He has good motivations. He really does believe in what he's trying to achieve. But how he achieves it is less important to him. He's not the first that you can say that about that have worked in the White House. But he has succeeded to a degree that none of his predecessors could have imagined. He, in many ways, is the president Richard Nixon always wanted to be. He's succeeded in things that his predecessors tried and failed at.
Professor Rosenkranz, we've got 28 executive orders, or actions, I should say, on Obamacare. We've got controversial actions on immigration. He basically jumped into a civil war in Libya without congressional approval. He decided doctors can ask their patients about whether they own guns at home. I mean, the list goes on, not to mention the fact that, you know, drones can be used to kill American citizens and so on. And yet, every day it's something new. I mean, at what point would it be clear? Would it be clear to everybody that this needs to stop?
Well, Megan, some of these examples are crystal clear. So the clearest in my mind is the various Obamacare extensions. The statute could not be clearer. It says January 1, 2014, and he has repeatedly extended these deadlines in the teeth of clear statutory text. And I think that's just indefensible.
You know, but you've got a Congress, and Britt Hume pointed this out, that they wanted these delays. Let's stick with Obamacare for now. They've been saying, you know, delay the mandates, delay the employer mandate, delay the individual mandate. So they're, you know, not really in the best position right now, Professor Rosenkranz, to turn around and say, but what's he doing? In your view, what is the best remedy now for people who have genuine and sincere objections to what's happening?
Well, so first of all, I want to applaud Professor Turley. The folks who like these policies should nevertheless be up in arms about these constitutional violations. If you want Obamacare to be suspended, you should go to Congress and ask them to suspend it or delay parts of it or whatever it is. The president cannot do that unilaterally, and you shouldn't sit idly by just because you like the policy result. This has to be done in the constitutionally proper way, which is new legislation.
What do you make of it, Professor Turley? Because you circulate in the circles of the progressive elite. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just guessing. But what do they say to you? What do your friends, your colleagues, academics say to you?
You know, privately, I think many civil libertarians, liberals, and Democrats are concerned about this. You know, on my blog, you have a very heavily libertarian and civil libertarian audience, and there's a lot of discussion there. I think part of the problem is that many people cannot get themselves to take the step of opposing the president who holds this iconic position in American history. And it's a terrible mistake. He's not going to be our last president, but these powers will outlast him. And the terrible thing about constitutional authority is that once you lose it, you pay a heavy price to get it back. And I think people will loathe the day that they were silent in the face of this type of concentration of power.
Wow. And if you want to check out Professor Turley's blog, I recommend it. It's jonathanturley.org. Excellent reading. Gentlemen, thank you both so much.
Thanks, Megan.
Happy to be with you.